Close listening. I'm Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B. And today we are going to be talking about a record called For Free by David Crosby. I just happened across this at the library the other day, and it is the latest record from David Crosby, so I thought it would be fun to check it out. Without further ado, let's get into the tracks. So I've noticed in my limited experience listening to David Crosby that he often opts for a kind of unusual, ethereal beauty in his music and reasonably poetic lyrics. But the triumph, it seems, with at least the first track of this record, is that he manages to do these sort of high art or modern art, however you want to describe it, thing, while also mixing in some poppy elements that make it not just a cool or impressive song, but a song that sticks with you and sticks with your head. In the opening track called River Rise, he uses some upbeat chords in the verse that just really makes the song sound lovely and stick with you, in addition to being mysterious in those classic David Crosby ways. It's also a duet with the great Michael McDonald, known for, amongst other things, the Doobie Brothers. And the lyrics, there's not maybe that much in there. I feel like it's mostly about having a euphoric feeling, and he uses this imagery of water, like you're at this wonderful, surreal water park. But I think maybe there's a bit else in there. There's a bit that goes, it's out of my heart, it's out of my head, it's out of my hands. So kind of a message of surrendering to the universe, just sort of trusting that you will be happy without having to sort of micromanage everything. I do know in the documentary that came out about David Crosby a few years ago, Remember My Name, he talked about how bad his heart problems are, and that means he's always feels like he's on mortality's doorstep. So even though it could just be a throwaway line from another songwriter, I feel like that it's out of my heart line kind of means something there. And then similarly on the theme of mortality, he sings Diamonds Shine Forever Underneath the Twilight Sky. Track 2 I thought was pretty good as well. It's called I Think I. This one starts with David Crosby harmonizing with himself. This is a contrast to having a duet with another separate person, Michael McDonald, on the previous track. So I feel like he's now delving a bit more into the surreal by clearly doubling his voice than doing the sort of straight poppy thing he was on the first track. The chorus of this one sings, "There's no instructions, no map." And so I feel like it's in dialogue with his earlier song, Compass. That was a song that's sort of overcoming personal demons and seeking out direction. So the fact that he's revisiting these images over 30 years later says he wants to think back to that journey, and even years later, even years after following that advice, he still has progress to make. Track number 3 is called The Other Side of Midnight. This one is exclusively credited to David Crosby's son, James Raymond. I believe this was a son he didn't raise, but became reacquainted with through music. And James Raymond is an accomplished jazz musician. And it looks like, for years they collaborating together. So it's a real feel-good story. But regardless, James Raymond's compositions fit in with everything else on the album. So it feels like there's a real mental synergy between them. James Raymond's song here, The Other Side of Midnight, to me, it's kind of reminiscent of what Peter Gabriel did in his famous song, In Your Eyes. In that song, Peter Gabriel sought to mix the spiritual with a love song. And this is a song about sort of looking up at the stars with a lover. And in the first verse, it's happily describing being in this relationship. And the second verse, it's describing missing this relationship. And the chorus goes, "Why does the love light shine from up above? Tell me." So it kind of does that thing where it mixes the romantic, the idealized with a kind of spiritual, but in a more of a David Crosby fashion. This one isn't straight up euphoric. It's not worshiping the gods. It's more asking questions of the god. Track number 4 is called Rodriguez for a Night. This one is co-written with Donald Fagen of Steely Dan, and you can absolutely hear that influence. This one is just more of a cool jazz song, and it's about losing a love to this cool person named Rodriguez. However, one could hear this song as more serious if one listens to it in connection with track 3. Track 3 is sort of seriously and spiritually mourning a lost relationship. And so maybe this is showing an earlier version of those feelings, which is more surface level anger. Whereas now in the present, the singer is thinking about the loss of this relationship in a more spiritual or symbolicized way. Track number 5, Secret Dancer, is another one of my favorites. I think if one looks at the lyrics, it could be yet another perspective on this lost relationship dynamic. There's a line in there that goes, "That night when they finish." So it appears to be a kind of fatalistic singing performance, and possibly even not from the perspective of a human involved at all, but from the perspective of an alien. They're kind of like taking notes on why human relationships seem to always fall apart. Why do I assume this song is about an alien? It's a very rough guess, but there are lyrics where they say the humans. Obviously, if you're talking normally, people don't tend to refer to other people as the humans. Thus, I view this song as being from the perspective of aliens. But I also think it's a nice example of musically structuring, both because it manages to have a relatively folky or singer-songwriter sound that I like while still being experimental. It kind of stitches different parts together and does so perfectly smoothly. Kind of like the song The Lantern by the Rolling Stones, but I think this is an even better song than The Lantern. Track number 6 is called Ships in the Night. And I also view this track as perhaps being in dialogue with the previous track. So I'm now stringing tracks 3, 4, 5, and 6 really coherently together. So on the one hand, we're sort of continuing the structure of the previous track of sort of aliens observing humans. The lyrics, they feel very observational. They're describing behavior in a mechanical way. There's also a reference to a green-eyed creature in the night. At the same time, it does refer to waking up from the nightmare. So it sort of transitions from this distant alien perspective to once again a human internal monologue. Finally, we get to track 7, For Free. It's a duet with Sarah Jarosz. I feel like after we've had all these sort of surreal songs, this song is kind of waking up to reality. It's looking out a window and hearing a busker playing a clarinet. It's an appreciation for the fact that when someone busks, there's a good chance they're not going to be making a lot of money out of it. So they're really giving us the gift of music for free. And I feel like this song serves as a real statement on David Crosby's part. It's the title track of this record, but despite the fact that we have all these compositions that are co-written by David Crosby or by his son, James Raymond, the one song he wants to name this album after is an old classic, a song written by Joni Mitchell. And that might feel like kind of an odd choice when you have so much original material to name your album for. But that's kind of the spirit of the song. It's celebrating the idea that music is in the air, it's for free. You don't have to have written it to enjoy it. I also feel like the delivery on this song, it's very good, but very humble compared to what we've heard so far. The only instrument is really a piano, and David Crosby isn't even taking the whole spotlight. He does it entirely in duet with Sarah Jarosz. And at least to my ears, it sounded like her voice was often louder in the mix than his. So amongst other things, I feel like David Crosby is really trying to embrace humbleness on this album. So that's why he puts the focus on this cover rather than the new material. It's why he sings it as a duet. And not only is he celebrating Joni Mitchell, who's someone who he's always hailed as a brilliant songwriter. I think he said he views her as the greatest of the modern singer-songwriters ahead of Bob Dylan. And this, even though he tells a story about how she broke up with him by saying, I have a new song to play for you. And she came and she sang a song breaking up with him. They apparently aren't on great terms, but he continues to look up to her. And in addition to that, not only does this album play tribute to Joni Mitchell, it also in a way pays tribute to another great singer, occasional songwriter of that era, Joan Baez, because it's her painting of David Crosby that adorns the cover of this album. Track number 8 is called Boxes. So I feel this takes us back to the beginning of the album. Whereas tracks 1 and 2 were straightforwardly hopeful and euphoric, this one combines a bit of that hope and euphoria with some lyrics that are more self-disciplinary, sorting things into boxes. It again, like track 1, uses this water imagery, and it kind of gives us that relaxing, wonderful image of being wrapped in a watery blanket. But this blanket at other times, just with how they play the guitar, sounds a bit more explosive, like you're washing some water gushing from a natural park. But nonetheless, it tells you you can tame this rough water. You can make it relaxing. You can bask in the power of nature. There's also a little anecdote in the lyrics about spilling a kettle. And I found the sort of duality of this scene compelling because at the ones it's relaxing in the sense that he's singing about a little homey event, spilling a kettle. But it's also at the same time still a reminder, you got to be responsible. Track number 9 is called Shot at Me. In this one, David Crosby, or whoever the singer is the listener rather than the observer. So they meet this friend who's just come from the Middle East and as a result has all this sort of weird traveler's advice. And it's as if David Crosby, who is like the outspoken psychedelic member of the Byrds, who likes to write all these slightly unusual songs for popular music, is for once trying to be the easygoing guy in the listening chair. And finally, we get to track number 10, I Won't Stay for Long. Again, we're seeing some revisiting of the opening track. This one uses naturalistic imagery, though this time, rather than focusing on water, it focuses more on grass and cliffs. Also, unlike the first track, which is sheerly beautiful and mostly washes away the fear of mortality, this one tries to exude optimism and perseverance despite having the sense of standing at the edge of a cliff. So kind of as I felt with the previous David Crosby album I listened to, that was 2014's Cross. I feel like lots of these songs are brilliant, but they all have a sort of similar, unusual style. If that style isn't your default, they kind of can melt into each other. So you both appreciate the art, but maybe don't remember as many of the songs as on a more straightforward pop album. Nonetheless, I feel like this is about the strongest version for as wide a range of audiences as possible as you're going to get of this David Crosby material. So I can't say enough how much I like that song, River Rise, and then I Think The Other Side of Midnight, Secret Dancer, and that cover of For Free. I mean, that's 5 songs right there, 5 great songs by a singer-songwriter who's been around from decades. That's a pretty big success right there. So let me know if you have other favorite David Crosby works or what you think of the For Free album in the comments below. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.